40 years ago, the film The Chosen introduced general audiences to a world many may not have been familiar with, the insular Hasidic Orthodox Jewish community. It also introduced all of us to an unlikely friendship, a friendship between not just any son of that Hasidic community, but Danny, the brilliant son of the Rebbe, the spiritual leader, and Reuben, the son of a modern Orthodox Zionist professor. More on that story in a moment. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Audrey Galix, and I have the honor of sharing with you a conversation with Jeremy Kagan, the director of The Chosen, and the actor who portrayed Danny, Robbie Benson. A conversation that is, of course, a presentation of this, the 21st edition of the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. I'm proud to serve on the Community Engagement Committee of the AJFF, and I also serve as content manager of the Atlanta-based AIB network. Like the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, we are an organization that believes in building community by sharing meaningful stories like The Chosen, stories that bring people together peacefully, civilly, across cultures, worldviews, and faith traditions. So a few words about the movie and more details about our esteemed guests before we explore the movie together. I suspect that many of you watching the show or know that The Chosen is based on the acclaimed 1967 novel by the same name by the author, scholar Chaim Potok. It's set in Brooklyn in the 1940s, the last years of World War II, revealing the horrors of the Nazi Holocaust and the drama over the establishment of the State of Israel. The movie highlights so many overlapping themes for me, including but not limited to the personal struggle between religious and secular values and how each of us reconciles that tension in our own way within ourselves and with others. The expectations that parents have for their children and the ability to accept and love them for who they are. The human tendency to judge or stereotype people who outwardly may seem different from us, and the importance of not judging others based on perhaps just their appearance or some rituals that they perform. The challenge for authors, filmmakers, any artist essentially, in portraying a Hasidic or any other unfamiliar character in a way that humanizes rather than stereotypes them. And the balance between authenticity and the need to create a film with a mass appeal, mass audience appeal. So let me tell you about the artists who deftly navigated those tensions and these themes in the film. Professor Jeremy Kagan is an award-winning film and TV director, writer, producer with films about Jewish subjects, not only The Chosen, but Crown Heights, which won the Humanitas Award, about music bringing together the African-American and Jewish communities, and Golda's Balcony. He's a tenured professor at the School of Cinematic Arts at USC and has created the Change-Making Media Lab. His most recent project is the dramatic feature film about the consequences of gun violence in America. It's called Shot. And he's the author of many texts on directing. He served as the artistic director of Robert Redford's Sundance Institute and taught master's seminars on filmmaking across the globe. But filmmaking and television is not his only artistic pursuit. His paintings about Jewish subjects include 54 silk paintings based on the parshas or portions of the Torah and 54 pencil Haftorah drawings, the writings of the prophets, as well as a set of iPad creations on these portions of the Torah and Haftorah, and illustrations for the Passover Seder, and a new short animated movie, The Haftorahs. Well, I'm a big Isaiah fan, so I can't wait for that, actually. Robbie Benson. You may know him from this movie, and thank you, Jeremy, for being with us. You may know Robbie from this movie, but he is also for, well, let's just say many people of a certain age, and many of my friends, well, Robbie, they still have a crush on you. Sorry, Jeremy. To my kids, the voice of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. And along with The Chosen, Robbie's best known for starring in such films as Jeremy, Ice Castles, Death Be Not Proud, Ode to Billy Joe, Tribute, Running Brave, The End, Harry and Son, Walk Proud, One on One, for which he wrote the screenplay, and to, as I mentioned, New Generations, the Voice of the Beast, and the Academy Award nominated Beauty and the Beast. Robbie has produced and directed feature films and television series like Ellen and Friends, and start on Broadway as early as I understand, at least on stage as early as 8 years old, but on Broadway in Zelda, the Rothschilds, and in the Joseph Papp production of the Pirates of Penzance. And perhaps most importantly from that production, that's where he met and fell in love with his co-star, the rock recording artist, Carla DeVito. You may not know that he has also written and scored a lot of music, musical Open Heart, and the best-selling novel as well, Who Stole the Funny, and your multimedia memoir, I'm Not Dead Yet. And I was delighted to read that you have composed many songs, including the We Are Not Alone. That's from the library dance scene in John Hughes's iconic film, The Breakfast Club. I had to go back and watch that, as well as the scores from many films. But I love that you've kept this in the family as well. His most recent works, you wrote the music for your daughter, Lyrics, Cosmic Poetic Lyrics, Love, Light, Revolution, and the score for your son Zephyr's film, his directing debut, Straight Outta Tompkins. But you mentioned that your most valued professional accomplishment is as a professor. Many universities around the country, NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, as well as Indiana University. But you're taking a hiatus and developing a new musical, I Hear a Song. Thank you very much. And thank you for allowing me to share with our audience those biographical sketches. Again, thank you for being with us to talk about the film, The Chosen.
Thank you.
When you think about the film, what perhaps in general stands out for you now 40 years later? Jeremy.
There's so much that this film did for me. I'm the son of a Reform rabbi, and if you asked me to spell or pronounce Hasidism, I would have been totally ignorant because I knew nothing about it, nor did I know anything about Jewish spirituality, meaning specifically Kabbalah. And what this movie did for me personally was to introduce me to actually Judaism on a much different and deeper level than I grew up with. My father's pulpit was a political pulpit. In fact, my father was down in Atlanta during the civil rights movement, marching with Martin Luther King, and he felt that the responsibility of Jews in America was, in fact, to be able to advance equity and inclusiveness and justice and peace. And so that's how he used his pulpit. He's also a psychologist, and so therefore he was also a therapist for his congregants as well. What happened with The Chosen, as I began to do research on the movie, is through Chaim Potok, I was able to get introduced to the Lubavitcher community, and I even got to meet the Rebbe at 2:00 in the morning, one morning. And it expanded my personal knowledge and experience and understanding of who we really are. And I now am a daily practitioner of a number of Kabbalah meditations. I'm not part of the center thing. I've had a teacher and studied with this particular Rabbi Stephen Robbins here in Los Angeles for years. And so it really shifted how I look at myself, and how I look at the world, and how I look at how I got here. So that's an interesting phenomenon, because oftentimes you make a movie, but it doesn't necessarily change you. It may expose you to new things, and hopefully it does. But in this particular case, this movie literally changed my life.
Robbie, your views, and I do want to go back to some of the things you just spoke of as well.
I think that this movie changed my life as well, in such different ways. I have to say that this is the first time I've heard about Jeremy's father. My father was raised to be a rabbi, and once his grandfather died, he kind of rebelled and literally went about his life as a Jew very much the same way that your father did, Jeremy. Mm-hmm. Marching for civil rights, even though he was a gun runner for Israel too. But I wonder if I was supposed to say that out loud.
It's interesting. That was also somewhat portrayed in the movie, but
Yeah, but I just outed my father. But you know, at this particular time in my life, I was very young. I was maybe an older soul when it came to my profession and how my skills were being developed because I had been working since I was very, very young. But intellectually, I was very young. And um, growing up Jewish, uh, my Bubby and my Papa Ben were always very disappointed that I never was bar mitzvahed. And the reason I wasn't bar mitzvahed is because I was on Broadway and I was actually starring on Broadway when I was 13. And my father turned to me and he went, "Hey, now you're a man." Um, and I think that the structure of Judaism was not something that he really believed in, and that rubbed off on me. But at the time of the movie, I had an opportunity to do a few other films instead of The Chosen. And I remember I was I was reading through a stack of scripts, and after I got to The Chosen, I literally threw the other scripts away because I had read Chaim Potok's book. I always thought My Name is Asher Lev would be one of the greatest films ever made. I always thought that even before The Chosen. But here was this incredible script, and I thought, this is going to make my Bubby and my Papa Ben proud.
maybe even better than a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, and well, it's funny you would say that because according to the Rebbe, who looked at me and then touched me, and everyone around me almost like fainted. And it was also something like 2 a.m. I don't remember. It was very late. It was because I was living with a Hasidic family to do my work and research for this movie. And we went to the synagogue like 6 or 7 times a day. And I did get quite an education. And they told me, based on some things that happened, that to be honest with you, I do not remember, because I was thinking of other things and thinking more as a filmmaker rather than a Jew, to be quite honest. But they said, "Congratulations, now you've been bar mitzvah." And I went, "Oh, well, okay." But I did not study. I didn't get up and speak the Torah or anything. But I have to tell you, because this movie, it had a profound impact on my life in a completely more, someone could say, superficial way, and it wasn't superficial for me. It was the moment that defined my life. So when the movie was coming out, I happened to be in New York City, because when I was growing up in New York, my father and my mom had taken me to Radio City Music Hall to see a movie. And I always thought, it'd be really remarkable if I was ever in a film that played at Radio City Music Hall, and Radio City stopped playing movies. And I thought, well, that's it. And lo and behold, for Israel's 33rd anniversary, is that right, Jeremy?
That's right. It's the 33rd.
Yeah, 33rd anniversary. There was an incredible premiere at Radio City for The Chosen. So I was flown back to New York, which used to be my home, and I always thought of it as home. And here was this opportunity to go see The Chosen at Radio City. All of my friends had moved away from New York. And I remember sitting in the hotel room, and I called my answering service, which was something I never did. And that was back when you had an answering service. And they said, Joseph Papp called you. And I went, oh, well, I better call him back. And so I called Mr. Papp back, and he said, he had asked me the year before and if I would play the part of Frederick in the park of Pirates of Penzance. And instead I did The Chosen. And he came back to me and he said, would you by any chance be interested in going into Pirates now? We're on Broadway and we want you to replace this actor. And I thought, you know, at the time I guess I was a bit like Danny Saunders. I had this arrogance that I'm going to originate a part on Broadway. I'm not going to ever, you know, go in and take somebody's place. But I went and saw the show, and I watched Kevin Kline, and he was brilliant. And I watched the person playing Frederick, and he was trying to steal the spotlight from Kevin rather than teeing it up for Kevin. And that really is, Frederick is the slave of duty in Pirates. Anyway, long story short, because I know this is about The Chosen, but here's how The Chosen changed my life. I went in, I decided I'm doing that. I adore Kevin Kline. I am going to work on that stage because he deserves more laughs. He's brilliant. And I, in doing that, met Carla DeVito, who took over for Linda Ronstadt. And if it weren't for The Chosen in New York in 1981, you talk about sliding doors, I would have never met Carla. And Carla is the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. And I mean, completely changed me as a human being, because I found my best friend and the love of my life. And we've been together 39 years now. So,
All right.
You know, I feel like I must be a shidduch maker. I didn't realize this until this moment, but Mandy Patinkin met his wife and the mother of his two sons on a movie I did called The Big Fix. So
wow. Mandy's pretty cool. He's a talent, man.
Was everybody not required, but encouraged to meet the Rebbe or to spend some time in the Orthodox community walking around?
No, you're very full. Well, the point is, if you're part of the Lubavitch community, the Rebbe was obviously an amazing, amazing being. And he was totally devoted to first of all, his congregation, which was a gigantic Lubavitch movement there. So you would set up times, and there were times that he would meet his congregants. And he was sort of very famous at the time for meeting people very, very late in the day, because, or even early in the obviously morning, because he worked all the time. And obviously was a great healer and on a spiritual level with so many people, as well as obviously a political force as well. And there'd be times when he would meet people, and people would stand online at the 770, which is this area in Crown Heights where the Rebbe lived. And literally there would be a line, and he would look you in the eye if you were lucky enough, and that look was as penetrating a look as you're ever going to get. Even if it was for a second, you thought like he was looking right through to who you really were, even if you didn't know.
That's so true.
Oftentimes he would give you $1. Now the dollar was weird, but and I never quite understood it, but it would happen. And Robbie and I were at this phenomenal experience of having this movie, which we didn't know. Listen, when you make a movie, you don't know if it's any good or not. You just don't know. I mean, obviously Chaim Potok's book was brilliant, but And I had amazing people, working on this movie. Here's Robbie working. There's Robbie working with Rod Steiger. I mean, this is an incredible cast of human beings, Max Schell. And I knew I had great talent, but I didn't know as I was working on the movie and finishing whether it was any good. And this was the very first screening of the movie at Radio City Hall. First time for any audience. And it's not a great place to actually, even though it's a spectacular space, it's not a great place to project a movie. Never really was. And I'm very, very nervous. And I don't know if people like it or not. And we've dealt with the Hasidic community, in particular the Lubavitchers, who were very helpful, because the Rebbe had an attitude which was amazing, which was, he said, look, if anything exists, it can either be used well or used poorly. Yetzirah, Yetzirah, if you want to get the idea. So if media exists, then let's use it for good. So therefore, as many of you know, the Chabad has an amazing media output every single day. So they were willing to help us along in making the movie. We, in other words, didn't get disapproved, where there were other Orthodox communities like the Sutmer who actually took out ads, do not get involved in New York in making this movie, because we needed extras who in fact looked like they came from the community. Okay, background artists. But here we have the screening. And a number of rabbis from the Lubavitcher community came to that screening. And I get a call the next day from one of them. And he says, the Rebbe is very upset. Now I'm thinking, oh, they've seen the movie. They didn't like the movie. They've told the Rebbe this is not a good movie for the Jews. And this is the response. And I'm like kind of shaking because I'm hearing this and thinking, I've just been disapproved by one of the great beings, and our movie has been disapproved. I wait for a second, and the rabbi said, you have a young child, don't you? You have a daughter. And I said, yes, my daughter had just been born. We lived in New York, and she was about a year old when we were making the movie. And I said, yes. And he said, well, the Rebbe is putting together a Sefer Torah. And every letter of the Sefer Torah represents a soul. And he wants it for young people because he wants to bring young people back to Judaism. So he's making each one of the letters available for the soul of a young person. And he would like you to know that one of the letters of the Torah will be written in the spirit and soul of your daughter. That was the end of the conversation. That probably was one of the better reviews we got on this movie.
That's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I'm verklempt listening to that. But he never did. The Rebbe never saw the movie. Actually,
I doubt it, but I don't know. He may have.
Well, I was wondering about Chaim Potok, his approval or disapproval, and then I noticed in the end credits that actually he was in the film.
Yeah, Chaim was. I ran the script that I had rewritten by Chaim to get his input. And in fact, one of Chaim's daughters is in the movie. And I also asked him to play one of the professors, the teachers. And there's the Talmud class in which he plays that character. And when the movie was done, Chaim wrote me a note and said, my book has been translated into 27 languages, and this is the best translation so far.
That's beautiful.
And did he say why that was, or just he just?
I don't think there's an explanation on that. I think he knew that we understood what his movie was about, and I sometimes would just say it was about one idea, which is tolerance, which is literally the ability to accept other people's beliefs and not attack them. Inclusiveness, even if there are differences in beliefs, and that's sort of what the book, espouses, and that's what the movie did as well. So I feel he felt it had come to another kind of life. And it's a fascinating thing because, oftentimes the issue of a movie versus a book and what's the difference in experience. And it's interesting that what Robbie said about the guns, because there were a number of moments in the book where there'd be one line, and there was one line about gun running to Israel, literally one line. But I thought this could be an entire scene, and it became a whole part, scene, and sequence in the movie. So what Chaim saw was the translation into cinema of what he had written, and appreciated the fact that it's not supposed to be a mirror, but it's supposed to be an inspiration for the way cinema works, which has oftentimes much more sort of visual and conflictual and dramatic possibilities that the reflectiveness of the written word isn't concentrating on.
And of course, there's also a greater a spotlight on the women. Women were given names like Danny, your sister. The mother had a higher profile.
Yeah.
Even the young women dancing. And how was that decision made?
Well, it's that's an interesting idea. There was a script that was written many years before this, and it actually was financed by some Methodists in New Orleans, which is interesting because they had bought the option. And in that script, there was a love story. When I read that script, which actually was sent to me by these people, I didn't like it. I didn't think the script was very good at all, and I was not interested in. So 2 years later, I got a call from my representatives who said the Landaus, who are great producers, they produce movies like Man in the Glass Booth and The Pawnbroker, speaking of Rod, and they wanted to do a movie, and they wanted me to be the director, and they sent me the script, and it was the same script, and I didn't understand it. And in this script, there was a good love story, but the rest of it wasn't very good, and I had never read the book. So I decided to go out because Landau's, and they had already talked to Rod and Max. Rod and Max were interested in the movie, so I must be missing something. So I read the book, realized the book was a masterpiece, and just said, look, I just need to rewrite this so that it can really represent what it is, and that's the script that Robbie got. But I kept part of that love story, because I thought it did also expand the dramatic nature of some of the conflict that is obviously in what's in the essence of the book, but here it became, a story of relationships, which of course is primary in any good movie as well.
And speaking of relationships, I'm looking at the picture behind you, and Robbie, you're there with Rod Steiger, and I'm curious, how was that to play opposite him in that role, which was perhaps even a little bit different from some of his other roles, a little bit more, crude in the way he talked, rough around the edges. What was that like?
Rod was a brilliant actor. I was one of his biggest fans. We were supposed to do a movie together years earlier. And on the Friday before the movie started, on the Monday, he had open heart surgery. And then came The Chosen. And I don't know, Jeremy, if you remember this, but you literally took us all out to dinner.
That's right.
Like right before, it might have even been the night before we started, on the next day or something like that.
Yep.
And we were all out to dinner, and I was sitting next to Rod, and he is a friend of mine because we had rehearsed on the other film. And then lo and behold, oh my God, he had open heart surgery, and I adored the man. And so I always kept up with him. And here we are now, we're sitting next to each other, and we went and we got our food and we got our silverware. And as I'm coming back to sit down for dinner, my knife falls off my plate and goes and hits him in the chest. And he goes, Robert. And also what's interesting is I have now had 4 open heart surgeries myself. So it's just a very strange and funny little memory of Rod. But the thing about Rod is, and Jeremy had to deal with this in the editing room, is that, you know, Rod would play the scene, and then on take 2, he would suddenly find another inspiration and take the scene a completely different way and start playing it differently. And I was actually taught as an actor, once you commit to what you feel is the right way to play the scene, you know, I mean, I literally grew up in an editing room. And so it's like, you don't want to mess around with, you know, even to the point of like at what line you pick up a glass and you drink with your left hand, not your right, and not on the other line. And, you know, so that you can put the film together. And watching Rod, who as an actor did this more than any other actor I've ever worked with, just would go off in another direction on take 2. And it was kind of liberating. I mean, it really was. It was beautiful to watch, is because there was craft and skill and inspiration in what I did. There was inspiration and craft and skill in what he did. And that inspiration would bring something completely new to the scene. And as an actor who's listening, you have to listen to what he's doing in take 2 and play to that. You can't suddenly play to what he did in take 1. So suddenly my work was changing a little and I felt a little guilty about that.
Was
And
that
I don't know if I ever said I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No, but here's the thing: the liveliness of that kind of performing makes everybody in the moment. And that's
right.
one of the things that we constantly talk about when we're helping new filmmakers or working with actors. How can you be, you know, spontaneous to something that's already written and you've rehearsed?
Right.
So it's almost a contradiction. So when an actor is able to find new things, and sometimes as a director, you encourage the actor on take 2 or take 5 to find something new in order for a liveliness, a spontaneity, a new truth to emerge. But that requires everybody to be present. And that in a way is exactly what's so exciting when it's working, because I think about this every now and then. You know, one of the most exciting parts of being a director is there are moments when you are only in the present. You only thing your mind is not rehashing the past, and it's not rehearsing the future, even though that's a lot of what you have to do as a filmmaker or a storyteller or as human beings, which we do all the time. When the movie, as you're making it and shooting it, or when these moments are happening, they are absolutely, they arrest your entire being. You are right there. And that presence kind of emanates from when the actors are brilliant, which these actors in these scenes, like this one behind me, was so powerful. There's this kind of experience of elation and wonder and amazement and presence. So that kind of, and I'm not talking about an improvised film because that's something else. People do that as well. But I'm talking about refreshing the moment.
Right.
And both, you know, I mean, Rod certainly wasn't very much into it. There was also, I really like the fact that the two fathers never meet in this movie. Yet the story is really about their two points of view. One is extremely orthodox, and one is extremely, we'll call the enlightened, not assimilated, but more open to the society that you're in. And this conflict, by the way, has been the conflict for 3,000 years of us as a people. How do you do this? How do you keep on to what in fact is being Jewish, and how do you stay within the world that you are living in the present and make it appropriate? So, but these two ideas are come together with the conflict of the two boys, the two sons, but the fathers never meet. So here are these two wonderful actors who knew each other, Maxwell and Rod, but they never had a scene together. And what would happen is they would come up to me and say, how did Rod do? Was he okay? And at first I just innocently said, oh, there's a wonderful moment. Rod and Robbie did this thing, but just, it was unexpected. And I was excited. And I saw Max, there was like motivation and even maybe a little, I have to do as well. And so I realized that it was a technique to get both of them to give their best game by just saying, Max was fabulous yesterday. Rod would go, oh, good. And Rod would have a scene with Robbie and he would be fabulous. So it was a kind of wonderful stimulus for both of them. But it was, there's a magicalness about people who are able to be honest and authentic. And I feel that Robbie's commitment as an actor in this movie was that, and certainly Rod's as an actor. By the way, if you take your responsibility as a director, which means alter and adjust if you didn't feel what happened is the right way that you want it to happen. And with a power source like Rod, every now and then I could see in certain movies where his performances are not as equal as the great ones that he gave. And I could see that he could be intimidating. And this was my third film. So I was challenged personally. Could I direct Rod? And then I realized that's what he wanted.
You talked about the two older actors. What about the relationship with Barry Miller? How was that? Was that equally? Uh-oh, a laugh. Go ahead.
Wow. Well, Barry and I didn't get along. And to me, the biggest sin in the arts is how to provide creativity without being selfish. To me, that's an art form. That's truly an art form. And at the time in Barry's life, because he's written me and he's apologized, he basically thought, for what's best for Barry, not what's best for the movie. And to me, it's always about what is best for the project. I don't care what you have to do. What is best for the movie, for everyone standing here, whether you're in front or behind the camera, what is best? And so Barry and I really did not get along. And as a matter of fact, the scene at the very end when I touch and I don't have my payas and I'm playing to him, I played that to a piece of tape.
Actually, you actually played it to me.
You read it.
That's right. What happened? That's right. Yeah, that's right.
In order to get the best look, we put a piece of tape on the wall, and you played it. I didn't overlap your lines, and we got that beautifully because I loved you and still love you, and wanted to love the character, and would have found love even in that piece of tape if you hadn't read it, because that was what was best for the movie.
That is
but you may want to get rid of.
I remember this. It was interesting. I remember a lot of this. And it was really unfortunate that this was happening. I'm so glad that you reestablished the relationship and Barry was able to acknowledge the challenge and the difficulty that he presented. One of the things that was amazing was, and I remember this, we shot this movie in a very short schedule. There wasn't very much money to make. This was almost an independent movie. In fact, in many ways, it was an independent movie. It was interesting about how it got distributed, which is actually fabulous story, because both Fox and Columbia saw it and thought it was great and wanted to distribute it. And then they thought, oh, well, only Jews will see it. And the math and the money didn't add up. Later, of course, expanded, and Fox ended up for a long time being the distributor of the movie, because they were wrong. Just like the book was not just for Jews, obviously, and the movie isn't. But there was this moment, I remember I was as a director, we'd shot the last scene between the two boys, and I was looking, and I shot it as a 2-shot. And I was looking at it and I said, this doesn't work. We have to reshoot it, because of what was happening. And what I did was had neither of the boys, neither Robbie nor Barry, on set at the same time, in order to be able to do something that you said, Robbie, which was really true, because I love both of you at that moment, and I knew there was conflict, but that's where I was, and you knew it. And so what happened, and it's so fascinating because it's film. What happened was there was the connection that we had that allowed you to make that moment, which is a wonderful moment in the movie, work, because of our relationship and the magic of movies. Because,
right. But movie making is a team sport. It's not, I'm sorry, you can't make a movie with somebody who thinks that it's all about them, and that hasn't changed. I mean, as the more that I learn, and I learn every day, the more I believe in that.
I agree. I mean, the word collaboration is so essential, and the ability to tolerate differences and then make decisions based on them.
I want to ask also, you mentioned the non-Jewish audience. What was the reaction at the time by the non-Jewish audience, if there's a way to gauge that?
But that's a tough one, because I can't really answer that, except that every now and then I would get a letter or a note. This is within the fact that when it did get distributed. But I guess the best example of this is the fact that the movie has such a life. We've all worked on movies that, at the time when they came out, they may have gotten good criticism, or they may have gotten, good audiences and made money for the people who invested in it. And then kind of became on the shelf. And this is one of those movies, as exemplified by the fact that here at your Atlanta Film Festival, it's being shown, but it's on television all the time. People show it in schools, and schools that are not just Jewish schools. It is a movie, and that's because of Chaim Potok's brilliance, that has relevance. And one of the things that's just fascinating is because it's a period picture, not that we were making a picture in 1979, in 1980, 81, that was about the end of World War II. So we were making, quote, a period picture. In many ways, period pictures made by in another time, reflecting, they sometimes have a greater life as well, because they aren't, quote, dated, because right. It's already the period. And I think that's one of the reasons why the movie has had a life that's been, expanded more than just the Jewish community or just the time that the movie was released.
And this may be kind of a stretch here, but I understand there were some, I guess I was calling them oy vey moments in the film, a couple of gaffes, if you will, turning on a light switch during Shabbat, the Sabbath. And maybe this isn't true. I read this on a review, and I'm referring to the Baal Shem Tov as the master of the good word. And right. I was curious. Now, in the book, I think in the movie as well, the Rebbe's character tests his son during the Talmud story or conversation after Shabbat services by intentionally inserting mistakes into his lesson. So I was curious, is that what you were doing there?
Well, the one the light one people sort of miss because it's you're talking about Friday and Saturday. So that criticism is at what time is this happening in terms of a lot of people thought that scene was all happening on Shabbos, but obviously it's day, but it's not obviously because the Talit are on for Shabbos morning. So that criticism is sort of like you can let that one go. The other one is correct. That is that's in and in correct translations. Master's a good name. But the idea was that even if that character doesn't get it right, it's like tapestry. Certain tapestries are perfectly made where there's something that's out of sync, not quite right, because the only thing that truly is right, totally, is, and I'll use the word I learned when I started making this movie with this group behind us, Hashem. Everything else has a little bit off. And when that's the repair that we need to do. And if somebody catches a mistake like that and says, oh, but it should be, then that shows that they're repairing. So that's fine.
And also that we're paying attention, of course.
Exactly.
And you address this when we first started our conversation. My first and final question, or one of the last, is what did you learn from this film that you applied to perhaps subsequent artistic projects, film or television projects? And actually I had added, or to your life, and I think we addressed that earlier. But
in my case, I'll answer that quickly. In my case, what it did do was to lead to a number of other films that were about Jewish subjects. In fact, one of them played at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival, which was Crown Heights. I don't think that would have happened, or certainly Golda's Balcony, the one-woman show that Valerie Harper did, if I hadn't made this movie. So in a sense, just having opportunities to make other movies that are related to it. But in terms of filmmaking, each film is different. And each film is almost like making a film for the first time. Obviously, that's not true because you have experience and you know the craft, so you know how to make choices that maybe solve problems. But one of the things that I think all of us as artists want is to be challenged and to find something new to expand who we are and what we can do rather than repeat it. So I'm not sure that the idea of what did this do for the next film, some opportunities emerge, which I think would be the most accurate statement. And a tolerance for differences of performance styles, for sure. That definitely came into my consciousness as well. But also part of it, also too, something else, I will say this, is the responsibility of somebody as a director. And that is that you have a vision. And it is your responsibility to inspire other people to be able to add to that vision. And when it goes off in some direction that is not where you are, you have to have both the courage and the confidence, the insight and authority to say, I hear what you've just done, but this is the way I want the piece to go. So let's go in this direction. And being able to work with two giants like Rod and Max and realize that that was my responsibility, that allowed me to work with many, many other incredibly talented actors and actresses with much more experience than I have, and be able to take my responsibility seriously.
Robbie, what about yourself? Any particular lessons in this film?
Well, yeah, I mean, the film was so special to me because it's about my people. I mean, I'm a part of that. And, I used to sit down and write knockout screenplays and get really excited about certain ideas, this and that. And in the last 10 or 15 years, there hasn't really been that feeling that I got when I sat down and I read The Chosen, that gave me this inspiration that made me want to sit and just write until I mean, you know, just a story and a project that just made me so excited. And it just so happens that there's a movie that I'm now collaborating on with Jody Marriott Barlev and Avi Barlev, called Music on the Bones, which is about Soviet refuseniks. And it is something that I feel, just like when I did The Chosen, I have to do this. I must be a part of this in some way. So I'm very excited about that. And it's because of that feeling of The Chosen. It's The Chosen, you know, made a mark on me that I'm so proud to wear.
Fabulous.
Both of you, is there anything that I didn't ask about The Chosen that you would like to share with our audience?
You know, it's interesting. There's so much. I mean, I'm just listening to Robbie and learning things now that I didn't know. This movie, I could talk about this movie for a long time, in terms of all kinds of aspects, from how it got made, how it almost didn't get made, what it was like during the process of making it, what the city did, by the way. Because of the money, we were supposed to probably go, the Landows, or they were down to, where are they? There they are. There's one of them right there, Eli. They said, you'll have to go shoot it in Canada. And I went and scouted Canada and Toronto, and I said, it just doesn't look like New York and Brooklyn. But they didn't have the kind of money to be able to do it in New York and Brooklyn. And what happened was the unions in the city knew something about this movie and what it was about, and a sense of tolerance and an openness and open-heartedness, and said, we'll make a deal so you can shoot it in the city. Also, I ran into, by the first anti-Semitism I'd ever run into, because we were going to shoot in Brooklyn, and shooting in a neighborhood that was not particularly accessible to white people, but I wanted to shoot because of a particular location. And unfortunately, there were a number of people who were part of that community who were just literally attacked. I had a meeting on Sunday with a number of people in that community who read me riot acts about, you know, bad things the Jews do. And I said, look, I came here to hopefully put communities together. That's what this is about. You know, and we bring some money into that community for the days we be shooting there. But if you don't want us, I understand. So, I mean, as I said, there are stories after stories after stories. Day one, it was 102 degrees. We were shooting the baseball scene. Our extras, Robbie's remembering things now, our young extras from the Robbie's group, the Hasidic group, had pay us, right? We were shooting in an Italian neighborhood. My production designer, art director, he fainted from the heat and had to be taken away. He was fine the next day because it was so hot. We shot something like 80 setups on that day, which was unheard of. No one shoots that many setups on a day, but we were, you know, I prepared and we were rushed. But during lunchtime, the kids went out to get some food, and it was in a neighborhood which was not a Jewish neighborhood and certainly not a Hasidic neighborhood, and a bunch of teenage kids started to heckle them and then started to chase them. And here are these background artists, kids running down the street toward where we were, sort of like where this was, pulling off their payas saying, we're actors, we're actors. So there are lots of stories that can be told about this. So I'm glad we have the time to tell the little we've been able to, but this one's got a slew of them.
Oh my gosh, Robbie, anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, you know, can I just off topic, and I don't know how cool this is, but I would just like, since you're in Atlanta, I'd like to say thank you to Stacey Abrams and to the entire state of Georgia.
Amen.
I feel like somebody has just fixed my heart again, and I can breathe, and I want to live. So thank you.
I second and third that, and thanks for bringing it up, Robbie. It is
Yeah.
the courage and the tenacity and the belief and the righteousness of this state, and the changes that this state has gone through to get to this particular moment. We are so inspired by it. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you. We certainly have these amazing leaders and legions of volunteers, so many people who stepped up to be part of the political process and make a difference. I cannot thank the two of you enough. I suspect that you have sparked some, I hope, conversation amongst those who have the blessing and opportunity to witness and hear and watch your sharing, the glow in both your eyes and the passion with which you speak about this film and its impact on your lives and the greater world is certainly inspiring. I want to thank you, Jeremy Kagan, the director, Robbie Benson, the one of the stars of the 1981 film, The Chosen, on this its 40th anniversary of its premiere. And I want to thank everybody in the audience for being part of this conversation through the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you
you
for allowing us the time. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thanks.